August 11 and 12 marks the one-year anniversary of the horrific white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. It also marks a year since my grandmother died after her long fight against cancer. My grandmother, Janet, was a Black woman. My grandmother's life was bookended with racial terror. The idea that my grandmother died the same day that literal white supremacists stormed what was once known as the happiest town in America was something hard to shake. Hateful people rallied for one reason: for hate. It wasn't the first time or the last. Lynching is probably the biggest example of hate-motivated violence in American history. It became more prominent after the Civil War as a tool to unofficially and unjustly terrorize and murder Black people, especially in the South. Emmett Till was lynched in 1955 for whistling at a white woman. My grandmother was 24 years old when the Civil Rights Act passed. The Civil Rights Movement was a decades-long fight to secure equality for people of color in the US. She dealt with the same equality issues leaders of this movement were trying to end. For many years, she was a maid for wealthy white New Yorkers who treated her like a second-class citizen. A major turning point during the movement was in 1963, an Alabama church was bombed by members of the KKK. 4 young Black girls lost their lives. In the next couple of decades, we see devastating amounts of violence against communities of color across the country. In Mississippi, a Black sharecropper, Rainey Poole, was found dead and dumped over a bridge in 1970. He was beaten by a mob of white men. They were found guilty almost 30 years later. In December of 1986, a group of about 12 white teenagers brutally attacked 3 Black men in Howard Beach in Queens, New York. One of the victims was 23-year-old Michael Griffith. After he was beaten by the mob of teens with a bat and tree limbs, he was eventually chased onto the nearby highway and struck by a car. Even the mayor of the time compared this attack to a modern-day lynching.
People, I just want to say, you know, can we all get along? Can we get along?
In March of 1991, 4 white officers were caught on camera clubbing Rodney King with batons and shocking him with stun guns in Los Angeles. King had 11 skull fractures. The officers were eventually charged with assault, but acquitted by a jury with no Black people. The verdict sparked the LA riots. No one can deny that there's been an uptick of not only racially based violence, but also violence against LGBTQ community, the Muslim community, and the Jewish community. According to the FBI, in 2016, there was more than 6,000 reported incidents of hate crimes, up from more than 5,800 the year before. The number of hate crimes triggered by bias against a person's racial or ethnic background rose to 3,489 from 3,310 a year earlier. Half of these episodes were motivated by racism against Black people. Has America become more intolerant, or do we just have cameras filming everything? My grandmother was 78 when she died. In digging into the numbers, it seems at first glance hard to answer the question. Then Charlottesville happened, and that fucked up my whole worldview. Hordes of white nationalists marched last summer, carrying tiki torches, guns, and Confederate flags in the city of Charlottesville. Unite the Right rally was a white supremacist demonstration where members of far-right hate groups came together to demand a white America. That sight was probably the scariest thing I've witnessed to date. I knew that racism wasn't dead in the United States. This was all on the same day my grandmother lay dying in her hospice bed, the last time I would ever get to see her. 1 year later, I would have hoped things would improve. White nationalists are hosting another rally, this time in DC. Part of me is glad my grandmother isn't around to see it. Deep down, I even know that she would tell me to continue fighting the good fight. Charlottesville wasn't the beginning of the end. It was our rallying call to end white supremacy once and for all.